We're talking about the war in Iran again because we're back to where we started, because it seems like that fragile peace talks between Washington and Tehran are on the verge of collapse, and what seemed like a slow inching towards normalcy has now reversed completely. The United States seized an Iranian cargo ship. Iran has retaliated. The talks are now in doubt and the clock is ticking because the ceasefire expires tomorrow. All of these questions happening at the same time. Also, the world is discussing whether or not Donald Trump and his friends are timing the stock market and the oil market and making money off these confusing announcements, and I'll take you through that as well in this video. But before we get started, please like and share this video, subscribe to our channel, and if you're so inclined, please sign up for our membership, because every day we put out a news bulletin which is curated and fact-check information from around the world that's important to you. You can take a look at it and sign up for it. We would really appreciate that. All right, let's talk about how we got here. Just days ago, things looked so different. The last time we spoke on Friday, there was a ceasefire, talks were being planned in Islamabad, Iran had opened the Strait of Hormuz, oil prices came down 10%, and there was real hope that this was winding down. Now we've made a U-turn, and thanks to, in my opinion, the extremely mercurial figure of US President Donald Trump, who announced now that American forces have seized an Iranian-flagged cargo ship called Taushka. I hope I said that right. According to Trump, the ship was trying to bypass the US Navy blockade, which is in the Gulf of Oman. It ignored warnings of the US Navy destroyer. So US forces disabled the ship by targeting the engine room. Marines boarded the ship and took control of it, and the US Central Command says the ship had ignored warnings for 6 hours. Now, just a quick sidestep, that naval blockade, which US had actually blocked the Gulf of Oman, not allowing any ship, neutral or otherwise, to enter Iranian waters and do any trade with Iran. And now they have taken control of one of Iran's ships. Now, the Iran foreign minister has called this a violation of the ceasefire, an act of armed piracy, and retaliation, like he promised, has followed. According to Iranian state media, Iran launched drone strikes against US military vessels in the Gulf of Oman. So this is a direct escalation, armed escalation now between these two sides. So now we are in very, forgive the pun, choppy waters. Now, since that Navy blockade had started, basically a Navy blockade is when the Navy blocks access to certain ports and waters in order to starve the enemy of economics. In this case, this is what the US Navy is doing to Iran. Now, since the blockade had started, the US apparently turned away 23 ships enforcing the blockade from the 13th of April. There have been several reports of vehicles being attacked by Iran on Saturday. 2 Iranian gunboats opened fire on a tanker. This is according to UK Maritime Trade Operations. A container ship was also hit by an unknown projectile. Separately, 2 merchant vehicles said that they were hit by gunfire as they attempted to cross the strait. This is by Reuters. The Indian Foreign Ministry has kicked in its diplomacy. It summoned the Iranian ambassador to convey its concern about a shooting incident involving 2 Indian-flagged ships that were targeted at the Strait of Hormuz. So data from the tracking site, the marine traffic, showed that vessels were able to make it through the strait while it was briefly open. Others were forced to change their route and turn around. So basically, the strait opened on Friday. Some ships actually made it through, but the fact that the US did not open its blockade and then it actually boarded and seized one of Iran's ships meant that Iran closed the strait again. It fired on some of the ships going through the strait. Some of the ships had to turn around, including 2 Indian ships. So things are not good right now. Now, why is the US continuing to impose a blockade? Trump's strategy, according to him, appears to be economic pressure. He wants to stop Iran from earning any sort of oil revenue, and we know that Iran has been sending ships to China. It wants to prevent selective access to the Strait of Hormuz, because you remember, just quickly, Trump had asked for all the allies to come and help out, and none of them did. And Iran said, you know what, for our friends, we're going to let them through. Only guys like you and Israel and your friends, we will not let them through. So that is something that Trump wants to stop. He also doesn't want Iran to continue to make extra money on the oil that it's letting pass through. It wants to force Iran into accepting a deal. So his point was, it's all or nothing. And that's the contradiction. How do you push for peace talks while tightening a blockade? And that really was at the heart of this entire crisis. Oil and gas prices are spiking globally. The ceasefire has collapsed effectively. It could lead to complete war, and the ceasefire that they had agreed to actually expires tomorrow. The impact on the global economy has been massive, according to some of the studies that have come through. So this is Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, UAE Minister of Industry, who has said that the 50 days of the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, 600 million barrels of oil have been disrupted. 600 million barrels of oil the world has been actually starved for. 50 days of escalating pressure on LNG, on jet fuel, on fertilizers, on essential materials that the world relies on. So obviously, there's a lot going on. Brent crude shot up out of happiness. Brent crude actually recovered from where it was. It's back to nearly $100 a barrel at this point. The Dow Jones is down 1%. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq is falling as well. So this is a global economic shock, and it's not good for anyone. In the meantime, the peace talks that were supposed to happen in Islamabad seem to be collapsing also. The US has said its delegation is on the way, although we don't know who's in that delegation. Pakistan has tightened securities. It is shutting down zones and public transports for this conversation. But Iran has refused to attend. Iran is like, we're not coming. Iran's foreign minister, Ismail Baghaei, has said that the delegation will not be attending the planned talks because the US has violated the ceasefire. He said Iran cannot forget US's attack on the country during previous negotiations. Also, Trump announced yesterday his representatives were heading to Pakistan. Remember, last week he hinted that he might go. Now he's saying representatives might go. Sources told Al Jazeera that it's unclear whether Vance would be going, the US vice president, but the US might send Witkoff and Kushner to Islamabad first. So effectively, it doesn't matter who goes from the US. If Iran doesn't show up at all, no talks will happen. And that is the real problem, because tomorrow morning that ceasefire will expire, and what happens after that? So the whole world right now is holding its breath. But at the same time, there's another story that has come out of the BBC. This is exclusive to the BBC, and I'm adding it here because it's information that you should know about. Now, BBC has examined apparently trade volume data of several financial markets, matched it to the US president's significant market moving statements, and it has found a consistent pattern of spikes just hours, sometimes minutes before a social media post comes. So effectively, there is a suggestion here that there might be some massive insider trading that's happening. Some analysts say this looks like insider trading, where basically insider trading is where people place bets on information that they have that is not in the public domain. It is 100% completely illegal, especially in the United States. There are others who say, hey, it just might be that traders have gotten really good at predicting Donald Trump or anticipating Donald Trump, which is interesting because he's so difficult to predict. He's so, I'm not going to say deranged. I'm going to say, I'm tempted to say unstable. I'm not saying deranged. I'm not saying unstable. I'm just saying that there's very difficult to predict a pattern in this man. While some analysts are saying it does look like insider trading, I want to remind you, insider trading has been illegal in the US since 1933, but no one has been prosecuted in these cases so far. But I do want to tell you what the BBC has listed. The BBC has pulled out 5 significant examples of Donald Trump's administration in the last few months where announcements were made and things were moving in the market before that. Now, I'll take you through those announcements. Again, this is by the BBC. Now, on the 9th of March, 9 days into the US-Iran war, Trump told CBS News in a phone interview that the conflict was very complete pretty much. This was the first time the public would have known about that interview. At about 3:15 in the afternoon Eastern time, the reporter who did the interview posted it on X. But oil traders reacted to that news much sooner than it came out in public. Market data shows huge surge of bets were placed on the falling price of oil 47 minutes before that interview became public. So there's a big question there. Those traders would have made millions of dollars on those bets. Secondly, 23rd of March, just 2 days after threatening to obliterate Iran, Trump posted on social media that Washington had, and you'll remember this, he said, we've had a very good and productive conversation with Tehran over the complete and total resolution of hostilities. It was a major surprise to all of us who were tracking it, but stocks rose immediately. Oil, which had been climbing, fell sharply. BBC reports at that time also that 14 minutes before the president's post, there was an unusual number of high bets placed on the US price of oil. Traders said it was abnormal for sure, the number of bets that were placed, and this was a report by BBC at that time. Now, outside of just the conflict with Iran, on the 2nd of April last year, Trump announced what he called Liberation Day, a sweeping set of tariffs on almost every country in the world. The stock markets plunged across the globe. A week later, Trump announced a 90-day pause on everything except China. And the stock market then rebounded almost 10%. Now, here's the thing, that 10% bump up was the highest since the Second World War. Traders started making bets on the stock market going up. Trump announced the tariffs, the stock market begins a huge surge. So the interesting data that the BBC put out is that the number of contracts, this is futures and options contracts, were normally in the hundreds up until then. They were at 10,000 contracts per minute after 6 o'clock. Traders bet in some cases $2 million on the stock market increasing that day, even though it had gone through 7 days of low losses. A huge surge would have generated profits of almost 20 million. So there was a lot of questions really about whether or not there should be an investigation. In fact, senior Democrats in the US Senate wrote to the SEC, SEBI, and urged the financial regulator to investigate. When BBC apparently spoke, asked for a comment, they didn't get a comment from the SEC. There were similar bets placed on blockchain-powered online betting platforms. There's about Maduro of Venezuela being out of office. So apparently right now, there are blockchain-powered platforms called Polymarket and Kalshi. These basically offer people chances to bet on everything, on the weather, on baseball, on foreign policy. Donald Trump Jr., Trump's son, is an investor in Polymarket, and he's on the board of the other platform. And apparently, there were a lot of bets placed on Polymarket, and there's one specific one that BBC refers to by an account called Burism Mix, very specifically saying Maduro will not be in office after January. And that account made a lot of money and then vanished. Similarly, according to Blockchain website, there were bets placed on a US strike on Iran happening on the 28th of February, whereas the attacks were confirmed by Trump in the early hours of the day. Those accounts earned about $1.2 million between the two of them. So there are a lot of questions being asked right now on whether or not Trump's behavior, which seems unpredictable and unstable, is in fact much smarter than people are willing to give him credit for. And he's actually timing the markets with his crony friends and making a lot of money. Remember, this was asked again when he had announced tariffs and he was going back on tariffs. He was announcing everything on social media. People are really confused about it. There was an idea that he was doing this so that his billionaire friends can make millions and millions of dollars and become richer and richer and richer. So we don't know what it is. It's really up to the US SEC to investigate if they choose to do so. But where we are right now, the blockade continues. The ship has been seized. Iran has retaliated. Talks are collapsing. The deadline expires tomorrow. So everybody's just going to hold their breath again to figure out what is really going on. In the meantime, countries across the world need fuel. India needs fuel. We saw these terrible visuals of Indian migrant laborers in Surat being lathi-charged at the train station when they were trying to make their way back home. Terrible images that reminded us of COVID and the way migrant laborers were treated back then. It is not good. We need the LPG to come in. We need the fuel to come in. We cannot afford a fuel crisis in the middle of the summer. We need fertilizer to come in around sowing season as well. So India needs for this problem to be solved, and I'm hoping that we see some sort of clarity, but from where we're looking at it right now, it does not sound good. So give me a comment in the comment section if you believe that there's some sort of insider trading going on, if you believe it should be investigated. And also, I do believe this is a good time to have a larger conversation about what happens when we make the world flat. where we're trading with each other so liberally, which is a very important capitalist activity. But at the same time, we've handed over the reins of power to completely unsympathetic, empathetic old men without a thought of what is happening to the regular people of the world. I mean, think about it. What is Donald Trump's aim really? Is his aim at this point, he keeps saying Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Theek hai bhai, if Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, is it necessary to starve the whole world in order to make that happen? Does it have to happen at exactly this point? Do you have to be such a massive, unreasonable person about it? And how is it that such a massive democracy, such a powerful democracy like America is being run by an individual who is almost running it like a fiefdom? Does he not have advisors? Does he not have people helping him predict moves? Does he not have people actually telling him what he can and cannot do, should or should not do? How is this even possible? How have we given the reins of such such consequence to someone with so little foresight? It's a really dangerous place the world is in right now. I want to know what you think. Leave me a comment.